Greetings, YouTube. These are your standard six-sided dice, familiar to people the world over. They've been in use for thousands of years. They often are used as a metaphor to represent random events, chance, the whims of fate. Now, some of us are lucky. When the cosmic dice were rolled, we were born into first world nations that have things like running water and clean food, functioning democracies, civil rights, the very stuff that is the foundation of a first world nation. Some people were less lucky. They were born into a developing nation, places that have poor food supplies, political strife, poor medical structures, potentially no medical structures of any kind. And you don't get to choose where you go. It's just what happens. It's where your genetic structure pops up, and you get to make out your life the best way possible. And there's a certain total and utter equality in that, but in many regards, it is the essence of inequality, because you never know where you're going to be born. Now, even though if you had perfect equality where you were born, people still have variations. Some people are stark glasses, a very minor inconvenience. Some people have diabetes, less minor. And if you're lucky, you live in a place where these things can be mitigated with glasses, insulin and such. But even in the best countries, the places that have the most equality, the most rights, the most technical advances, there are still inequalities within those places. Racial minorities can be treated poorly. You can be treated poorly based on gender, sex, sexual orientation. And you can be treated poorly about things that you have been raised to believe. Political systems, political parties, religions, philosophical ways of looking at the world. Now I want you to imagine for a moment that who you are right now, the person that lives inside that head of yours, could wake up tomorrow in a different place, in a different body. That the whims of chance are re-rolled for you, so that tomorrow you aren't in the place you are now. You could be born in Brazil, China, somewhere in Africa. You wouldn't get to pick your occupation. You wouldn't get to pick your family. You would just wake up in a completely different life. Now, if things were ideal, and we all had equality in the truest sense, it would fundamentally not matter where you were reborn. It wouldn't matter what country you were, the color of your skin, or your health, or your sexual orientation, or any of those things, because we would have the rights that we all would enjoy everywhere. But that's not how it works. If you were reborn tomorrow, there's a chance you'd be born into a situation not as good as you have now. Now, what I'm talking about here is something known as the veil of ignorance. The concept that where you are in life, the station you have, that you have somehow deserved it, that you have somehow inherited it from your ancestors. And the reality is, where you ended up was chance. So the best thing to do is make sure that no matter where you would end up, everyone would have the same rights and privileges and access to the same social structures and technology. Now, this is, of course, an ideal. It's easier to achieve in some places, like some of the first world nations, but it's not flawless. But it is a good ideal. The concept that we could change the system redo the social structures so that regardless of what you are or where you are or who you are, that everyone would be treated the same. That under the law, we would all be completely equal. That we would all have complete access to everything we need to survive. No, I'm not discussing luxuries. I'm discussing the very basic functions of life. Food, shelter, water, education, freedom from oppression. Nothing fancy. I'm not talking about owning a Lexus or a 6-bedroom house or any other thing that would fall into the category of luxury items. Just the basics of life so that everyone can live. I've encountered them many times online where people have acted as though that those who didn't get quite as good a role somehow deserved it. For example, people who couldn't necessarily afford a college education are then criticized for having made poor decisions. When in reality, the decision itself, I would like a further education, was taken away from them because of economic considerations. They were never allowed that fair playing field. And so everything that comes after that is their fault. They can try to better themselves, and there are options open. But the playing field is not fair. There are people born into privilege and people born into poverty. And you can end up in the other place without choosing. You can have windfalls, and you can have the rug pulled out from under you. So I believe in creating a system where everyone is treated equally under the law, regardless of where you are, who you are, what you are. I know it's a radical concept for some people, that it isn't comfortable, because they're going to say that, oh, you're going to take things away from me. Well, in some ways, maybe I am. But if you have the things you have that make your privileged position in the universe because the system treats other people unfairly, well, maybe it's time to change the system.